When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the Grease Comedy YouTube channel. Today's video, I wanted to take a look at Game of Thrones in its entirety and discuss what, in my opinion, is the best character from start to finish. In terms of the quality of this character never really drops off, even later on in the seasons. Now, there's things that are around the character. I think of Theon Greyjoy, who I believe is the best character of the show through and through. If we're looking at the characters that started from season 1 all the way to season 8. That is not counting characters like Tywin, who didn't get to see the Dark Ages. But I think Theon, yes, was great. And he might have had things going on around him that weren't so great. So, for instance, the Jane Poole plot, where they put Sansa into that wasn't the greatest decisions for Sansa's arc. But Theon's pretty much stays kind of the exact same, if not getting a little bit more personal than it does like in the book. But Theon is one of those characters where the show took certain liberties with the character, even in the earlier seasons, that were different than the book version of the character. And I think for the most part, a lot of those decisions actually worked pretty well. Because one thing I will say between Theon in the show versus Theon in the book is much more unlikable than Theon is in the show, in my opinion. In the first, season or two, Theon is somebody that we don't necessarily dislike. Me personally, I remember watching, Game of Thrones for the first time and watching Theon, and in season 1, very beginning of season 2, before Theon betrays Robb, I didn't hate Theon or any of those things. I didn't love him either way. I saw that there was definitely those character flaws within him, but I didn't hate him. Because in the book, the character comes off as very smiling, never taking anything seriously, being kind of an idiot. And so when you get to him taking, Winterfell and him betraying the Starks, it's like this, wow, this character that we already kind of didn't like became even more unlikable. But that's what George does, is George then kind of takes that and kind of has a Jaime arc. Now, we haven't seen the full extent to where Theon's journey is going to go in the book series, but in the show, I want to talk about what I think they did right with the character of Theon throughout the entirety of the show. So the first thing, again, like I talked about, Theon in the early parts of the show is I would say kind of likable. He's not the most likable character, but he's still solid. He's not somebody that you actively dislike, or at least I didn't anyway. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on that though. But when we get to season 2, and specifically when we get to season 2, I think this is where Theon's character really starts going, and it kind of parallels the book as well. It's where Theon starts getting his own POV chapters. And I want to play a clip from Theon and Lewin's conversation after Theon has already taken Winterfell, and getting into kind of his psychology and those things.
You know what it's like to be told how lucky you are to be someone's prisoner, to be told how much you owe them, and then to go back home to your real father.
So from that clip, the major part of coming away from this is Theon is a person that is struggling with his identity. One of the major, parts of book 1 for a lot of our characters is their identity. Who are they? And so Theon kind of has his, who is he arc here. And that's something that's going to start in book 2 and kind of be concluded in book 5. So this is something that's going to span multiple books, but in the show, it all starts here. And so it's all about, Theon trying to manage both sides, right? He grew up with the Starks. He got very close to Robb. He looked at Ned as like a father figure. All these different things. He got very close to the Stark family. And so when he goes back to try to get the Greyjoys to go with Robb, he comes back, very proud and all these things. But when he comes back to the Iron Islands and he is basically berated, his father basically publicly shaming him, favoring Asha, or in the show, Yara. And basically, Theon is having to make up for that. He's trying to make his father proud. He's trying to live up to being an Ironborn, trying to be someone that he's not. He's not grown up as an Ironborn. He is not a character that is similar to, say, Victarion or Asha. And I know Victarion's not in the show, but I'm using him kind of as an example. Or somebody like Euron, for instance, or even his father, Balon. He is not very similar to any of those people really at all. And so Theon has to put on this persona. And, looking at that quote, right, where Theon had to grow up being a captive, right? He wasn't somebody that was part of the Stark family, right? He was treated well by Ned and all these things, but at any time, if Balon decided to do a rebellion, Theon was going to die. And Theon's not going to forget that, right? Theon has that in the back of his mind at all times, that, yes, he might have gotten very close with some members of the Starks, but if if it came to it, Ned was going to kill him. And so that's a really weird thing to balance. How do you balance, this idea of growing up as a Stark, but being a Greyjoy while being, an outcast, even in his home in the Iron Islands? And so when you finally get to this moment, right, where Theon, betrays the Starks, and we really dislike Theon, D&D take kind of what George gave, gave them source material of where Theon's character was going to go, but even gave us a bit more. And I like both versions of Theon, post Clash or post season 2, right? Because they both kind of go in their different ways. They kind of end up at the same point. We get to like season 5 and then, the end of book 5. But Theon is this character where we get some added scenes. We get to see him and Ramsay as Ramsay's doing kind of his psychological like torture of Theon. And I think there's some things that are not the most logical in terms of some of the stuff going on with like Ramsay's whole thing with Theon in that moment. But again, I want to reference the show. I want to play a clip because I think this is his vital scene to his character, development and arc throughout the show.
My real father lost his head at King's Landing. I made a choice and I chose wrong.
So in this clip, Theon basically says here and finally admits everything, right? That he is somebody that wanted to be a Stark. He is somebody that looked at Ned as a father. He was, torn between this choice. Does he stay loyal to his friend and somebody he views as a brother in Robb and the Starks who he grew up with? Or does he stay loyal to his father and trying to get his approval and all of those things? That all comes out here. And you think about the atrocities, Theon did. He had 2 boys, killed, right? Just so that he could keep Winterfell, that he could pretend to be a Stark, play this role that he tells, Lewin, for instance. I just think that they did such a great job of taking the source material and even giving Theon more to do. And the actor who plays Theon, I think, is probably the best actor on the show in terms of the role that they played. You could throw Peter Dinklage up there as well. Michelle Farley, a great actor. There's a lot of great actors in Game of Thrones, but I think, the actor who played Theon did such a great job with the portrayal of Theon. And so we then move and we get a difference from the book once again, where we see a lot of Theon's torture, right? We see a lot of the things being done to him. And, you can't help but feel bad for this character, right? Theon is somebody that made a wrong choice and a couple wrong decisions that led him down a path that, he's hated by the Starks, who he wants to be, but also he has no love or respect being given from his father. All of those actions led to nothing, really. And for all of this to occur, and Theon being tortured as well, you have all that, and you have this breaking down of Theon's character, right? Because then you add a third facet to it, right? Not only is Theon trying to figure out who he is as a person, Greyjoy or Stark, but he's also now having to psychologically, pretend to be this Reek character to Ramsay. It's just so much identity crisis that's going on. And so when you get to, season 5, right? And again, there is some stuff that happens around Theon, but it's not Theon's character being bad at any of those points. Like, for instance, Yara trying to take him in the middle of the night somehow in season 4. That's not something that's bad on Theon. It's bad on other characters. So I don't blame Theon's character on that. And so Theon, we kind of skipped to season 5, right? Because that's when, you start to have the flip of that character and he's starting to break through, this identity of Reek. It's kind of very similar to the book, albeit in this situation, it's done with Sansa. And I don't love what it does for the character of Sansa, but what I do really like what it does for Theon. Because yes, in the book, Jane Poole is somebody that Theon would have known, of course, and they still would have had somewhat of a history. But in the show, when they do make it Sansa, it's actually, I think, good for the character of Theon. It's just not very good for the character of Sansa, because Theon has even more of a direct connection. Sansa and Theon would have grown up almost like siblings, right? Like Theon would have maybe viewed Sansa as like a younger sister, for instance. And so when you have this situation play out where Theon is watching as, Sansa is being broken down as a character, it pulls on your heartstrings even more for the character of Theon to break through, this idea of being Reek and to finally snap out of it, save the day, and, help Sansa get out of Winterfell. And that being kind of his moment where he's able to, atone for some of his past, issues that he's made. And that's going to be something that he is going to continue through the rest of the show, where it's him trying to atone for the decisions that he made, in season 2. And so, we have all that happen. Season 6 It's kind of an off season for Theon. He doesn't truly do much in season 6 once, he and Sansa are parted. But again, they end on very good terms, and we'll see them back, together in the next season. But then Theon's arc turns to his other persona, right? So he's kind of has his Stark persona where he's being family to someone like Sansa, trying to help her. And then he goes to being a Greyjoy, trying to pretend to, or not trying to figure out his identity, going then and going home and trying to see if that is the life that he can do. And I think there's some bad writing in terms of the Yara character with Theon. I think Theon, even into season 6, is still written really well. He's somebody that comes back to the Iron Islands trying to support his sister and stepping up for her, declaring her that she's the one that should be the ruler. She's the one that was here, under Balon. She is the one that Balon would have wanted to, succeed after him. And so he recognizes those things. He recognizes that he was not the person that he needed to be, and he hasn't gained the respect of the Ironborn, but he's okay with that. It's kind of him kind of being okay with all these things. And to then be thwarted again for another, maniac type character in Euron. And again, Euron's bad writing has nothing to do with Theon. It's just, again, I think there's going to be people that comment this and be like, oh, well, there's all these bad things around Theon. It's not Theon's character that's being badly written. It's other characters around him being badly written. Theon and Yara or Asha, they have to go into exile. They have to try and seek out Daenerys. And this whole time, it's Theon trying to establish himself back into a normal culture, him being viewed as maybe a person, right? It's something he hasn't been viewed as a very long time. And we see how that kind of is affecting Theon mentally and having to be kind of pulled out by Yara at times. It's interesting to see that dynamic. Theon is somebody that still isn't complete, right? Even though he maybe helped Sansa escape Ramsay and all that stuff, he still has to battle with his demons and his identity. Who does he really seem like he's loyal to, right? Is he loyal to Asha and Yara and the Greyjoys? But, again, the Ironborn have betrayed Theon again, right? He's now an outcast of them. Does he still want to help the Starks? It's something that still paints that even when we get into season 7, right? And so there's a really important scene to me in season 7 that is one of the best moments of season 7. There's not a lot of, in my opinion, truly great moments in season 7. There's a couple, right? They're kind of sprinkled in there. You have Olenna and her final scene of the show, really well done. I think Theon and Jon's scene, I want to play a little bit of that here, and then we'll kind of talk about it.
You don't need to choose. You're a Greyjoy, and you're a Stark.
So yeah, I think that this is a great scene because it's Jon finally giving Theon a little bit of respect and, not going to instantly kill him because of him atoning and helping Sansa and getting her out of that situation. But it's also telling Theon that he doesn't have to be one or the other. He doesn't have to be both, a Stark. He doesn't have to battle with being a Stark and a Greyjoy. He can be both. He can be somebody that respects both sides of, his quote unquote family or both of his sides because he's an individual. I think that's what Theon needed to hear. And in that moment, I think that really works well. Now, there's another thing that kind of pops up in season 7 that we have to kind of question, right? Theon against Euron, because we see in this really stupid way that it's done where, the Sand Snakes die and, Asha's whole fleet or Yara's fleet basically gets intercepted by Euron's fleet. Euron's fleet teleports all around the, place. But the question I have is, Theon not being able to face Euron and jumping and being, a coward. And I think some people might criticize that, but I actually still think that works kind of well, right? Theon is not somebody yet at this moment that is, courageous. He's still trying to find it. Yes, he has found some of the courage, right? Some of the courage to save Sansa and all those things. But facing, Euron in battle, that's something that, again, Theon hasn't found in himself yet. He's still trying to discover and find that part of him. Because, there's leftover damage. Ramsay is very much still a part of Theon, and that psychological torture would have effects when you have somebody like Euron strolling in, using the same type of manipulation and things on Theon. And so when he has, in his season 8 arc, which is, stepping up and saving Yara and Asha, his sister, it's kind of completing his Greyjoy arc, right? It's him completing and finally kind of maybe earning, his sister's respect or being somebody that is Ironborn, right? And again, I don't love the way that we don't really see how Theon even somehow gets to Asha or Yara. how any of that happens, I'd say it's more bad writing in terms of the actual script than it is on Theon's character, because the end result is good. Theon being able to, rescue his sister is a good moment. Now, I will say, I think one thing that the show missed on was neither Theon or Yara / Asha was involved in Euron's death. That was a huge miss. I don't know why we did that. I think that what should have occurred is Theon, maybe with the help of maybe Theon and Yara, teaming up and killing Euron, I think would have been the fitting way that the character should have died. But you can't do that when, Euron's still a prevalent thing, even into basically the second to last episode where Theon's already dead. So yeah. So at this point, going into then season 8. So we're already in season 8. I already talked about something that happened in season 8, but going further into the season, Theon still has to atone. He still has to kind of complete his Stark arc. He's kind of completed his Greyjoy arc. It's now time for him to complete Theon's arc. And Theon, I think one of the best scenes in season 8 is when Theon shows up at Winterfell. And, Daenerys is asking, why he's come and why he's not with Yara. And he responds in this.
I want to fight for Winterfell, Lady Sansa. If you'll have me.
This is good writing. Theon doesn't even seem to notice Daenerys. He looks straight at Sansa, and we already as an audience can understand the connection the two have because of their past experiences, and him coming back to serve House Stark because of betraying them. I think this is a powerful moment in season 8. I think there are, again, very sprinkled in there, very far apart from each other. There are good things about season 8, and it's why I think Theon is the best character that is written from season 1 to season 8, because of these things. His character's still functioning and it's still evolving. And so then when you have in his final kind of moments, it's him stepping up to guard Bran. It's him protecting the person he basically made leave their castle and betrayed the Starks. It all comes back to Bran. I think that's a powerful arc. And you have Theon fighting to the death and to the man, and being told the last line Theon gets as Bran tells him that he is a good man. That is compelling and great writing, because Theon has fought his entire life to be that, to be accepted by his father, to be accepted by the Starks, to have some sort of respect, and to find out who he is as a man. And for Bran, the very character that all of this went wrong for Theon to tell him that he is a good man because he knows what's going to happen, is powerful. And Theon's death, to me, charging the Night King, trying to defend Bran, it works quite a lot. He gives his life defending his family. I think Theon has a great arc. I think Theon from beginning to start is the best character. What do you guys think? I try to go through, really each season. Some seasons I didn't really talk as much because they're not as important overall to his development. Kind of hit the broad, big moments for him. But let me know what you guys think. I don't know if this is a hot take to suggest that Theon is still good even into season 7 and 8. I think there are some bad scenes in there, like Theon when he's fighting the captain or whatever. I think it's the end of season 7 maybe, or beginning of season 1. I don't remember when that actually takes place, or like how the execution of Yara being freed by Theon goes down. Not great, but I really like Theon. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.